Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever in the world you may be joining us from today. My name is Francesco Del Carpio, and I am the CFL York Operations Coordinator. I would like to officially open the 10th session of the Drones for Public Health, Safety, Risk, Humanitarian, and Emergency Management Speaker Series, presented in partnership with York University's Advanced Disaster and Emergency Rapid Response Lab, or ADERSON, and the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology Center for Innovation and Research in Unmanned Systems, or CIRIS. I would like to begin today's session with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge and recognize that many Indigenous nations have longstanding relationships with the territory upon which our campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. The area is known as Tekaronto and has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and that the territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. As this is an online event, our participants may be joining from various locations, so I strongly encourage you to learn about the traditional land upon which you are located. With this, I welcome our moderator, our speaker, and our participants from around the world. Welcome to our webinar. I would like to now introduce our moderator, Michelle Arif. Michelle Arif is a seasoned geospatial analyst and R&D project coordinator with a strong track record in project management and the strategic application of emerging technologies for disaster risk reduction. She holds a master's degree in disaster and emergency management and has a robust background in applied geospatial technologies. Michelle has led and contributed to numerous research initiatives exploring the intersection of climate change, disaster trends, and innovative tools, such as UAVs and remote sensing for humanitarian response. Her work spans global humanitarian efforts as well as community-level resilience building. She is currently focused on advancing local disaster preparedness initiatives, working to bridge technological innovation with practical community-based solutions to enhance early warning systems, response strategies, and recovery planning. Michelle, thank you very much for moderating today's session and your ongoing support throughout the series. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Francesco, for that warm introduction, and welcome everyone to our 10th session of the series. I'm so glad that you guys are still here. For those that have been joining us since day one, thank you. Your support is incredible. And for those that joined somewhere in the middle or are tuning in for the first time, welcome. It's great to have you here. As a quick reminder, the chat box and Q&A boxes are open. Feel free to ask any questions as they pop up. We'll address them at the end of the presentation during the Q&A session. Okay, so let's dive right in. Flying beyond visual line of sight is commonly known as BVLOS, which represents one of the most exciting and challenging frontiers in drone operations. It opens up a plethora of application in disaster preparedness and emergency response, in addition to managing risk better by improving environmental monitoring and infrastructure planning. But flying BVLOS is not without its challenges. It not only requires the technical know-how, but also regulatory approval, careful planning, testing, and risk mitigation strategies. To guide us through all this today, we're joined by our special guest, Steve Donovan from Foremost UAS, one of Canada's key hubs for advancing BVLOS capabilities in a controlled environment. Steve brings extensive operational experience, is responsible for daily activity at the Foremost UAS test range. He is the primary liaison with all range users, assisting them in getting their comprehensive application documentation for an SFOC or a Special Flight Operations Certificate required to fly BVLOS at the range. He also oversees flight operations and proactively coordinates all activities with NAVCAN and local flyers and stakeholders. To provide a bit of background on Steve's extensive experience, he joined the Canadian Air Force as a radar technician for 10 years, and then 22 years as a defense contractor in the Canadian Arctic, working in Alaska and the Middle East as well. His radar experience is broad across many roles, first as an Air Force supervisor, instructor for component level repair for complex 3D radar systems, and operational management roles, including airfield management, radar technical specialist, quality control, quality assurance, and developing and administrating comprehensive operating procedures. In addition, Steve has a 5-year background working in the oil sands as a foreman for electrical and instrumental crews, where safety is paramount and stressed in every task performed in this environment. Steve has a Canadian Air Force technical training background to trade qualification level 6 and has an Alberta journeyman qualification for instrumentation. Steve will be diving into what it really takes to develop a BVLOS exit strategy that can support long-range missions with confidence. With all that said, welcome, and thank you, Steve. The floor is yours.
Okay, well, thanks, Michelle, for that introduction there. I appreciate that. Welcome everybody that's out here at the webinar today. Here at the Foremost UAS Test Range, we're one of 2 locations, Transport Canada approved locations in Canada to be able to fly BVLOS. So I thought I'd go through a little presentation, which I'll share here on the screen, and we'll go through that and then see if we've got any questions afterwards there. Okay, so the Foremost UAS Test Range BVLOS Innovation Center, or BVLOS Inc. So we're going to look at the transitioning from the VLOS, or Visual Line of Sight, to BVLOS, and the future of the RPAS is out of sight. So a little introduction here. If you look at the future, payloads, packages, and peoples, everything's going to be transported by drones. Currently, upcoming drone cases will need to be operated by BVLOS. BVLOS approvals, though, are rarely approved by civil aviation around the world, and only in stringent different cases. And so what we need to do is, what is the prerequisite for this transformation? Well, we need to look at, for the future here, BVLOS drone flights must be conducted safely, near people, over people, and safely alongside piloted aircraft in national airspace. If we look at a little history here in the Canadian Transport Canada, pre-July 2019, BVLOS operations, believe it or not, for those that might not have been part of that game back then, for 250 gram to 25 kilogram, all had to be approved by Transport Canada through Special Flight Operating Certificate, or an SFOC. And our organization, we did hundreds of these, and it was labor intense and that. And then after that, July 2019, TC had in place their VLOS regulations for, a little typo here, 250 gram to 25 kilogram. And anything that was above 25 kilogram, or if we're looking at special events as an example, or BVLOS, now required still TC approved SFOC. Then around 2023, TC approves what we call the short range, or SR SFOCs, for the 250 gram to 25 kilogram low risk BVLOS operation. And they were able to do this by using what they call the human visual observer for up to 4 nautical miles. In this instance, the PIC, or the pilot in command, could not be any more than 2 nautical miles from a VO, and the VO used situational awareness for an additional 2 nautical miles to form that SR SFOC. So that greatly transitioned more for people in the field, especially in the uncontrolled Class G rural type environment. And then in April this year, new regulations were rolled out. And it was a phase 1 of April 2025, where first we can get the certification for the new regs, called a Pilot Complex Level 1 certification. And then November 4th of this year, the new regs are going to be in place for what they call the Complex Level 1 BVLOS. And now it's going from 250 gram all the way up to an incredible 150 kilogram. So that's a big game changer. And the medium platforms for VLOS from 25 kilogram to 150 kilograms. So if we take a look at these low risk, I'm just going to go into BVLOS functions, since that's what we look at the test range here. These are drone platforms up to 150 kilogram, as noted. And they also have to have some kind of a BVLOS operation with a detect and avoid solution. So whether it's a human VO, or whether they got something on board integrated system, or a ground-based, like a ground-based system like Sparrowhawk radar, for example. That's one that's been designed here in Canada from Canadian UAVS, and it's deployable here for up to 12 nautical miles when you're looking at the uncontrolled Class G airspace. So whatever you have, you don't need to have an SFOC. If you look at that chart below on the right, 250 gram to 25 kilogram, And now for BVLOS, and then including 25 kilogram to 150 kilogram, you can do BVLOS as long as you're in a non-controlled class G, 400 feet and below, and you are more than 1 kilometer away from a populated area. Then if you're 250 to 25 kilogram, you could go within 1 kilometer. And this is like a declaration I'll go into later. And if you're within that 1 kilometer for anything that's bigger, the medium drones, now you need an SFOC. So they made it easier for these low risk type operations for BVLOS. So that opens up a whole new floodgate starting November 4th of this year. However, that being said, anyone that's flown or gotten their SFOCs here in the past or currently got them, you're going to see a lot of these new regulations are really in tune to what your organization already exists with. So for example, the only thing difference, now you're going to need this new Pilot Complex 1 certification to do these BVLOS operations. So that's a new requirement here. And with that, there's a certification exam, some more ground schooling, but it's all designed to make sure that you have all the integrated components that are important to be able to make this declaration afterwards, or to be able to have the operation in place for these low risk flying. The SME or organization has a specific structure they have to have in place. For example, they have to have an accountable executive. They got to have a person in charge for maintenance. They got to implement a training program, implement SOPs for their flight operation. And important, they have to have implementation and a process for any safety risk management. And for the BVLOS portion, they have to have a proven DAA solution that meets what they call ARC-B and ARC-C criteria. ARC-B, when you go into what they call the specific operational risk analysis, or SORA, ARC-B means you need a DAA solution of 70% or better, and that's in the uncontrolled Class G environment away from the aerodromes. Or C, once you get into maybe into an environment where you have an aerodrome, a regional airport, like a Class C, then it's 90% or better. So that's, and again, you could have something like, for example, you're not using a human factor DAA solution, but you might be using something like the Sparrowhawk radar I mentioned earlier on. Something that's a proven entity. The BVLOS Innovation Center is at the heart of this transformation, and looking to advance safely and effectively the BVLOS operations. We do this by guiding drone manufacturers using our in-house specific airworthiness programs. We coach drone operators, academia, research institutes to advance from the VLOS to safe BVLOS ops, and reduce barriers to BVLOS adaptation through in-house innovation and technology development. Why is this important? If you take a look here now today, universally around the world, RPAS and AAM, which is air mobility, are the fastest growing segments of the aerospace. Market projection indicates rapid growth and significant increase for the economic impacts over the first movers for the next 10 years and beyond. If you take a look here, we here at BVLOS Inc., we tackle the complex development of technologies and procedures involved in flying BVLOS. We do a case-by-case study, whoever clients that we're supporting, whether it be the drone manufacturers or the drone operators. We create R&D projects to develop solutions, and our own drone-specific airworthiness program moves the RPAS sector forward, drone airworthiness and other drone R&D projects. And we resolve the barriers to BVLOS adaptation and approval. From a small business perspective, or SME, we see BVLOS benefits as follows. It's like a 3 to 10 times revenue multiplier and a 2 to 4 times jobs multiplier. So the enhancement of going BVLOS, you can see for reaping those rewards. BVLOS Inc., just for a definition of who we are, we're a partnership between UXS Consulting Limited, which is our the organization I work for, the company I work for, and the foremost UAS test range. UXS Consulting Limited. We're an innovative multidisciplinary team with over 100 years, combined technical, operational, and regulatory compliance experience in the drone robotic systems. And as I mentioned earlier, we're Foremost UES test range is one of 2 BVLOS approved test ranges here in Canada. And Above Partnership provides the RPAS operators the capabilities to transcend from VLOS to BVLOS. So just taking a look here where we're located here in Southeast Alberta. So this is a road map here. We're tucked in between just south of Lethbridge and Medicine Hat. We've got for airspace over 700 nautical square miles or 2,400 square kilometers. We have a ceiling up to 18,000 feet ASL or above sea level. And we utilize some robust SOP operations, SOPs for our operations here. We have over 300 clear days a year for VFR operations. And our wind speed, 7 to 8 knots, so on the average. And for our infrastructure, if we're a fixed wing client out here, we have a 3,000 by 75 feet wide asphalt runway. We also have a hangar that's going to accommodate a significant large size type aircrafts for 68 feet wide by about 48 feet. And we have situational awareness radar systems. We are actually the first client. I actually helped with the development and the analysis with the Squarehawk ground-based radar, which we use here for situational awareness up to 12 nautical miles, and also part of a DAA solution for looking at for clients that want to utilize that type of DAA solution. So for surface structures, we're a prairie here, so we have crops, grassland, some water features with livestock and wildlife, oil and gas infrastructure, power distribution lines, and a road network. And we utilize our regulatory compliances through Transport Canada, using a lot of the Canadian aviation documents. We have memorandums of understanding between Transport Canada and NavAids to be able to utilize this airspace. And a little look here, here's our airspace. So if you look at this airspace, the CYRs is divided into 3 different segments. For argument's sake, CYR 234, 235 have both activated. We have over 50 nautical miles east to west. We have, as I mentioned earlier, up to 18,000 feet if we also activate CYR 236, which is a layer above the CYR 234 and 235. Through Innovation Solutions, we've had clients, by using an alternate ground control station situated outside the range and do a handover, where we've been able to show, demonstrate where that alternate control station could control that drone all the way from the west to the eastern sector for over 100 nautical miles. So we're able to do that. And with contiguous airspace, Foremost Airport is just on the top of the screen there. And so we transition with Transport Canada. They give us the airdrome here. So we're not the typical Class G uncontrolled airdrome. It's part of our transition from VLOS to BVLOS, recognizing with our SOPs, we safely cross into the CYR controlled restricted airspace. This is just a bunch of photos. Cirrus is pretty popular here. I show Cirrus in a few locations. They've got their Swiss drone SDO1 that they operate out here a few times. I think they're coming out here again in August. And then we have some other clients with different platforms, some pictures of our hangar in the bottom left. And I used to have the radar on the my fifth wheel trailer, but now we got it mounted on recently on our flatbed truck, making it more mobile for us. If you look at BVLOS Innovation Center, we got our experience here on the civilian side with the Project Sky Census. It was ITB obligation through Periton, then Arkfield, 5 years, 2019 to 2024. And we were primarily Our portion was for the airworthiness development program. So we looked at the technical, the operational, the regulatory, and the investigation and the audit. And we also helped support, with my radar background, the development of the Sparrowhawk radar for that detect and avoid system to enable BVLOS RPAS operation. Now, as an example, Canadian UAVS now has a SFOC nationwide utilizing this DAA solution. So a lot of these activities with the airworthiness, we did a lot of testing, operational, technical, and looked at the procedures. We were also involved in what we call the phase 1 with Transport Canada and NAV Canada for RPAS traffic management. And that's been continued on with phase 2 with some great organizations. One is Air Market right here, Alberta based, is continuing on with that march. And with that outcome, we developed a very robust, if not one of the best in Canada, airworthiness programs. We've got third-party accreditation, and we're positioned here now to help grow the RPAS industry. So our mission, as I mentioned, we're advancing the capability with ongoing projects, ensuring safety with the airworthiness program to help SMEs or organizations achieve their BVLOS approvals, and most important, building trust. For the RPAS technical, operational, and regulatory compliance expertise, we have programmatic experience, with our people that are on board. We have a very robust group. A lot of them were Suffield, former civil servants with about experience on there with program management. We also introduced the BVLOS Innovation Center in 2020. That's what we formed with that. And we ensure for operational safety, airworthiness, as I mentioned before, with our procedures for BVLOS, whether it be the normal, emergency, and integrating a DAA solution. And as I mentioned, we've done the RPAS traffic management. Advancing capabilities, we've got over 100 years with our team, with R&D experience in the UAS and the test eval to reduce risk. Over 35 years, this is kind of my forte of radar systems and airport operations and innovative projects to help develop technical and training solutions. And of course, the key ingredient is the foremost UAS test range here where we could technically do all the testing with that. Here is just some collage of different photos utilizing our experience and expertise. So why BVLOS innovation in the foremost UAS test range? Well, you're looking here for transitioning from VLOS to BVLOS successfully. As I mentioned earlier, you can become the next 3 to 10 times revenue multiplier, or the 2 to 4 times growth RPAS organization. BVLOS Inc. can provide the client with a robust airworthiness package. Operational, technical, and training can be conducted here at the foremost UAS test range. So higher risk BVLOS examples, I mean, you can, if you're an organization now, as I mentioned, with the new regulations, you might be just, that's where you want to be. And so you don't need to have the SFOCs. You might be implementing your VO just with a human VO, go to 4 nautical miles. But if you're looking to go anywhere higher, anywhere further, or other airspaces, for example, then foremost UAS test range with BVLOS Innovation Center can definitely be that assistance to get you from the VLOS transition and then successfully to be able to exit out of the Class F type airspace for the environment and then meet all the requirements that TC has in place. So at the test range, we evaluate the client aura. We can assist with the manufacturer declarations. We can verify that DAA solution, and then rinse and repeat here at the foremost test range to be able to ensure that you meet, whether it be the operational, the technical, any of the procedures or solutions that TC is looking for to be able to validate so that you can fly in other airspace. When you fly out here, there's a lot of documentation. So we go through all that documentation review. We assist you. We don't write the documentation, but we can, or we can provide you with a proprietary type template to help individuals that don't have that exposure, time, or experience. And then after that documentation is written up, we review and provide that feedback. And then we submit that SFOC to Transport Canada to get the final approval. And then you get an SFOC to be able to fly at the test range, to be able to test your platform. So who have we helped? Well, this is a wide variety of different clients in Canada. And some of these are some of the bigger names that some of you may have heard of. Kinetic Target Systems, Landing Zones Canada. They're actually a newer organization, but they do the weather balloon application with a glider. Pretty interesting if you look them up. Arium Analytics, they're into the airfield analysis pretty heavily there. Canadian UAVS, as I mentioned, they developed the Sparrowhawk radar, and they're deployed all over Canada and the US and now in the UK market. Drone Delivery Canada, they've always been in the news. They were the last mile delivery at Edmonton Airport. They've done medical supplies runs with using a Sparrowhawk radar, actually, again, with a proven DA solution in Ontario. Fulcrum Air, Alberta-based Rivet, they're looking at transitioning small aircraft where they're able to supply medical runs and look at disaster relief and that, and we're in the northern parts of Canada where we don't have that road infrastructure. And Independence First Nations Alliance, Northern Ontario, Superwake, SAIT, Cirrus, and UVic, University of Alberta. So the sky is the limit. So if you take a look at some of these folks that we've helped, Fulcrum Air, they developed an aerial robotics system. And what that one is basically on a high voltage distribution line, they're able to put on a bird deterrent that previously, this is dull, repetitive work, which a lot of, when you look at the drone world, a lot of it is. And they're able to do this, take away the human factor, where before they had to use aerial lifts and or even helicopters in some remote location, technicians hanging off by the high voltage line, trying to put a bird deterrent. Well, Fulcrum Air came up with a solution, which not only grew them here in Alberta, they are so successful, they're now over the US with an office there and in Australia. And on the right-hand side, another company that we assisted, Superwake, Ontario-based company. They have an fixed-wing launcher, which is on solar panels with up to a 12-hour endurance. And they just recently put on a Starlink system where you can remotely control this anywhere and then successfully fly this, and they do a lot of different operations, wildlife surveillance, for example, or you can envision, you can use something like this and border security, disaster relief, where you've got that endurance and a proven product. Any questions? I'll just stop sharing here.
Wow, that was a lot of information. Thank you so much for that presentation.
No problem.
I think we do have some questions, but I just want to quickly say that Wade Hawkins is here from SAIT and Dr. Ascari from York. So I just want to say that these guys are the ones that are responsible for putting this series together. So thank you to them. And if they want to unmute their mics at any time, feel free to do so. We do have a question here from Nick. I just want to see if I can unmute his mic if you wanted to just jump in and ask. Let's see. I don't know, Francesco, does he have permission to talk?
He does have permission to talk, but it looks like he might be having trouble connecting his audio.
Oh.
So
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Okay, don't know what his question is, so I guess we'll just wait for that one. Let's see. Second. No. Okay. I have a question, I guess. You talked about the transition from visual line of sight to beyond visual line of sight. Do you see, like, working with all those different clients that you're working with, is there one challenge that companies and clients seem to bump into more than others, or is it just different things that pop up for different people?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, it's a case by case. So a lot of it depends on what the requirements are. Like if you got radio line of sight, everyone knows obviously, if the Earth's curvature, you're going to have a limitation there. If you got some clients that are in remote locations, like looking at the wildfires, northern BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, or other parts. Sometimes they have the difficulty, they can't fly very far above the tree lines. So they need like a satellite solution. So you take a look at, depending where they want to deploy, and then the detect and avoid system, that's probably going to be the key ingredient. If you want to bump beyond that 4 nautical miles with a human visual observer, with a robust DAA solution, and I only mentioned Sparrowhawk, because it's a Canadian solution. So I like to always give credit to where there's a Canadian solution. I'm defense radar background, and defense radar systems are incredibly expensive. Most DA ground-based solutions are in, you can say start $1 million plus. And I think Canadian UAVS solution is like, don't quote me, somewhere between 160, 180,000 Canadian. So it's a doable solution and a cost-effective solution. Again, depending on that case-by-case study, there is onboard DEA solutions, but those are the big things. And the other things for people is if you're not an organization like Cirrus, if you're just getting started, sometimes it's a little bit going through the complex specific objective risk assessments, or the SORA. They got all those 24 operational safety objectives. Just going through all that, because it's not linear. If you get into different airspaces, like controlled airspaces, it goes up. And then if depending on the maximum takeoff weight, incredibly goes up again as well. So looking at those solutions sometimes is very challenging for people to be able to assess that. And that's where, as our organization, we've helped a lot of clients, to overcome those and make those solutions for them.
Mhm. Wow, that sounds great. Thank you for that. I'm gonna ask again if Nick, do you want to type your question, or I feel like it's a good one, but I'll move on to the next one. We have another one asking about what is the procedure for doing test flights at your facility?
Yeah, so it's a number of procedures. First of it is probably doing a face-to-face. That's always the important thing, so that we have a fundamental understanding just what the client or the prospect client's looking for. Once we have that understanding, maybe you're doing wildfire monitoring. Maybe you're doing some medical deliveries. Maybe it's some surveillance and agriculture, inspections, et cetera, et cetera. So we find out just where that client is. So we get a better understanding and appreciation. And then we can give solutions. At sometimes maybe the foremost UES test range isn't the phase one. A lot of times there, you look at the BVLOS, you should be able to look at all your procedures that you need to do for BVLOS, start looking at creating them, and do what I call the shakedown flights by doing VLOS, get out to some landowner's acreage somewhere and be able to validate, test your procedures, look to see what you are capable of doing with that particular platform, hone it in. And then the test range is where you're going to test things like further out. Now you got to test your C2 link. Maybe you got to test the procedures for your detect and avoid maneuvers in reference to that. Even your communications sometimes are tested as well. But once we figure out from the client where they're at, we then say, okay, we can give you the assistance to, if you need to get out to the foremost UES test range, here's all the documentation you need. We'll give them an outline of what is required. We'll provide them the link to the Transport Canada matrix that's required for the SFOC for BVLOS. And depending on their skill set or their time, we can either say, go ahead and provide us that information, or if they're new to it, we could help them write it, or internally there's other organizations that they can get the assistance from. However they do it, once the documentation is in place, then we review it, and then after a little bit of feedback and forth, we then submit it to Transport Canada for the SFOC approval. And then once we have that SFOC, then the client is good to come out here for the test range. And usually an SFOC is good for up to 1 year. Then what we help them with there is their exit strategy. So if they're looking to fly in maybe oil and gas line pipeline inspections as an example, well, what do they need for a DA solution? And so we can go through, do the testing and evaluation, do the third-party verification with them, depending on, again, it's a case-by-case study, depending what that individual needs. The smaller platforms typically don't need as many days out here. Maybe they need up to 5 days if it's 25 kilogram or below. But if you get into the bigger platforms and the unknown entities, because a lot of these manufacturers haven't tested these drones to an extended distance, so they might need not just days, sometimes weeks. And if it's a brand new development of a system that's never been tested before, well, now you're looking at the manufacturer declaration. Even for companies that have already been in production, need to get that declaration for Transport Canada, so they can be able to test all that out here. And some of these companies may need hundreds of hours, just like any proven airframe. You got to be able to validate that airframe to be able to do BVLOS and get those declarations and Transport Canada approval. And that's why it's right here, the Foremost UAS test range. There's nothing here. We're in a rural part of Canada. If all you want to do is test and eval and research and development, you're going to be able to fly pretty much every day of the week here if required.
That's great. Thank you so much. Okay, so the first part of your answer was get in contact with you. How would someone get in touch with you? Is that just through your website, or do you have
so on the Foremost UAS test range or the BVLOS Innovation Center, we got 2 websites. Either or, my name's on there, or the BVLOS Innovation Center. I think it's the founder, Doug Hanna's name is the contact there. And I can provide my number as well here for anyone that wants it. By all means, there's no such thing as a dumb question. A lot of times, if you're just starting off and you just need some information, I'm here and glad to help. As we mentioned, we're agnostic. We're not here. We don't make money off of anybody else's ideas. We do a lot of NDAs, of course, but we're here to help anybody to go do that transition from VLOS to BVLOS. So we're always welcome to phone calls, people looking for, what's the next step there. So sometimes we'll give them guidance for that as well. So.
Perfect. Thank you. I did see a raised hand from Dr. Ascari. If you want to go ahead and unmute.
Sure, I will. Thank you so much. I noticed there was another question on the chat that may be similar to what I wanted to ask. First of all, thank you very much, Steve, for this very informative session. I'm glad that this sort of services are being provided to Canadians as they transition from, as you said rightly, VLOS to beyond visual line of sight, and that's so important, obviously, as these regulations come to force. My question is more about, based on your observations that is happening right now, what kind of industries are more into demanding for or using or looking forward to these changes in the regulation as you observe? I think that is more or less perhaps relates to question that Calera is asking, maybe different, but that's one part. I start with this question and go to the next one if you have time. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So thank you very much there for those kind words. And the first thing here is a lot of, if people are just, as I mentioned earlier, if they're just looking to do without the SFOC, do that what we used to call the short range SFOC with the VODAA for up to 4 nautical miles, then that's great. Because there is an expense to use like anything else. The test range is not free. So you might not need that. And that's why I said the advice there is to get a hold of me first and figure that out. But a lot of these things, if you take a look at it, 95% for argument's sake in Canada is uncontrolled Class G, the rural type airspace. So we're blessed for that. We don't have the population. We've got what, 40 million people here. If you get into Calgary, you know, the big urban centers, you got a lot of these different published airdromes where it gets a little more difficult strategically to fly around. So you got to be like 5 nautical miles away. But a lot of it there is, if you look at oil and gas, a lot of the agriculture for the medium-sized drones, even for BVLOS, that's a big assistance, because these bigger drones that are like 85-pound payloads for agriculture, when pesticides becomes approved here in Canada, they're flown BVLOS anyway. So the new regulation is going to allow a lot of the agricultural industry to take full benefit with that. And if you're looking here, you know, with these low risk BVLOS operations, wildfire industry is a big one. We've had a lot of different clients over the last couple of years here in the wildfire industry there. So when you're looking at locating and deploying, the further distance you can go, you know, to look at whether you're doing the night type BVLOS, looking at the hotspots or mitigation, that's incredible. And then to take away the SFOC requirements, where now they can just show, yeah, I've declared it, this manufacturer platform can fly this distance, and I have a robust DAA solution, and they're good to go. So that's going to open the ground where they don't necessarily need to come to Foremost. We're looking at those folks that still have, as I mentioned earlier, the higher, the longer endurance, or to find an effective DA solution, or the heavier weight sometimes. But yeah, that's kind of where we find probably the forestry industry and the agriculture industry and the oil and gas. That's probably, and we do have some, I should have mentioned, Rivet. They're out here deploying a bigger platform where they can do a lot of the northern runs. If you look them up, Jeremy Wang, his background there, they started off with a little single-manned aircraft, and now they're building into a bigger, like a Tool 7 platform, and eventually I think into maybe a Cessna platform, where, or not a Cessna, but something that'll carry up to about 3,000-pound payload. And if you're looking at the northern side, to do anything like that is incredible, because I worked up in the high Arctic for about 7 years, and everything is longitude latitude. So to be able to have an RPAS solution to help people that far north, I think that's just tremendous.
Wow, that sounds incredible. I think you did kind of touch on Claire's question as well. So she was asking, with the new BVLOS regulations coming out, do you anticipate a change in the type of operations that most people will be testing at Foremost? So a little,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I wouldn't, like, even before, when we had the bigger drones, people would come out and they would spend weeks, and because they were timid back then, and if they have an acreage, and if you get an SFOC and you can do a lot of that shakedown flights, that's the big thing. So as I mentioned before, now if that's all you need, if all you require is your complex low level 1 operation, and all you want is that VODAA solution, then great. Go out there, a small team, because you might be a small organization, and now at least you've got that in place, and you can go and do 4 nautical miles, move on to the next location, do another 4 nautical miles. So that in itself, the process makes it that much easier, because they use the drone portal, and register their flights, and then they just jump from one location to the next. So that's a big help in itself there.
Great, thank you. Sounds like it's pretty straightforward. Contact you. You guys will figure out what the need is, and then kind of like assess it from there on. If there are any other questions, Nick, I'm gonna call on you once more. If not, then you'll just have to take that question home. But let's see. Oh, we have one more. for the new BVLOS regulations, will there be a new listing on the Transport Canada website for approved drones?
Yeah, so that's an ever-changing listing. So when you take a look, there's already a listing there for the manufacturer's declaration. If you just look that up in Transport Canada, do a little Google search, manufacturer declaration, Transport Canada, it'll come up with pretty much the first layer of that search. And that changes all the time because Transport Canada is catching up. They were saturated in the past where they weren't able to look. Manufacturer declaration was inputted into the system, and TC didn't always have the time to be able to look at that. But now I've noticed the past year they're catching up, and what was past the manufacturer declaration may not necessarily be true now. So you need to look at it, always be active. If it's in there, great. If it's not, then you got to be looking at, okay, can I validate it as my organization? What we're looking at here. So there's that step there with the new low risk level 1 complex operation, where you as the individual of that organization can make a declaration. But then also at that time, there's an annual report period. Transport Canada is going to assess your operation at any given time. So key thing is safety. I mean, never throw away the safety. So if you're not unsure, and manufacturer doesn't know 100%, then that's something that might need to be tested here at the test range as an example, if that's the platform that you want to utilize. But for low risk, the 250 gram, the 25 kilogram, there's a plethora of different platforms out there that they'd be able to utilize. Ones that go up to 12 kilometers, most of the DJI platforms, as an example, no problem. When you look at the M300s and above, not an issue with those. So they'd be able to utilize something like that without much issues there.
Okay. One more question that just popped up was, I heard that Transport Canada will be adding a new list that is approved for BVLOS only. Is that true? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what they're saying in the new regs. Of course, stay tuned where that's going to be at, because it's all new and they're not starting till November 4th, as I pointed out in this presentation. However, they're letting us all get prepared. If that low level level 1 complex certification, people can engage and get all that done. And yeah, so that listing should be coming forth. And then of course, some organizations are going to be adding to that list as they start utilizing their platforms. And so it'll see things go, start to expand, just like the current manufacturer declaration. With the new list, that'll expand over time.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I guess we're nearing the end of this presentation. We've got some messages from the Cirrus team. Stephanie's saying, see you in August. Hopefully that'll be a good good mission there. And Wade's also saying, thank you for the presentation. So for me, thank you, Steve, for all this information. It's great to have this out into the world of drones, and hopefully it'll catch the right people. Thank you, Francesco and Dr. Ascari, for hosting this incredible series, and Wade and Stephanie and the others at Cirrus for the countless support that we've gotten for this series. I'll let Francesco do closing remarks, or Dr. Ascari, whoever wants to take the lead.
No, back to Francesco. Thank you very much, Michelle, for moderating this session, and thank you, Steve, for your time and great presentation.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I just would like to also quickly echo my thanks. Thank you so much, Steve, for the great presentation. Thank you, Michelle, as always, for helping us coordinate the series and speakers, and for moderating the session. Thank you to everybody in the audience for taking the time to join us and participate and ask questions. I think we had a great discussion. As a reminder, this is being recorded and will be shared on our YouTube channel, which I've shared in the chat. It'll also be posted on the actual event page on the CFL York website, so you can see it there as well. If there is any follow-up at all, I am also putting my email address in the chat, so please feel free to reach out to me and I can pass your questions along to Steve if anything comes up afterwards. And then just one final reminder, we do have another session coming up on August 21st with Andy Olson, who will be talking about heavy lift drones and their use in avalanche mitigation. So Please mark that on your calendar. And please share it with anyone who might be interested who isn't registered yet, as our registration is always open and free for these sessions. So with that, just one last big thank you to everybody. I think it was a great session. And yeah, I look forward to next month. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Take care, folks.